Can you see me? Look closer. Camouflage. This video is the first in a series about painting camo patterns. And I would like to start with the typical two-color Hasbro camo pattern, which looks quite easy to paint. But that's only because it is. Why do people always want to make things seem more difficult than they are? The two-tone camouflage pattern Hasbro used a lot in their vintage G.I. Joe line. For this and some future videos I'm going to paint camos on a few single legs. And during this experiment I'll use the legs that I found most in my folder box, 1985's Dusty. Why are his accessories so freaking rare? They made a gazillion of the figure! Is it because his bipod is so small? Probably because it's so small. First I prep the legs and I prime them all in a neutral grey tone. And for this part of the video I'll paint some dark spots on a light background using a brush with a big belly, so I have a nice big reservoir of paint. Painting the dark green spots is quite easy. Just keep in mind that they have to be painted as random as you can. Don't forget to paint the inside of the knee as well. And to prevent scraped knees, make sure no parts of the knees are rubbing. Or else... Because I use thin down paints to prevent brush strokes, I'll give all the spots a second coat. The big belly brush ensures I don't have to go back to the palette a lot, so I can do many spots in one go. To create a more desert themed camo, I put dark brown spots on a light brown background. Basically I follow the same steps as with the previous example. Multiple thin coats of randomly painted spots. So in the end, after prepping, sanding, cleaning, priming, assembling, base coating and painting, I end up with this nearly identical camo pattern as I started with. You can also reverse the pattern by painting light spots on a darker background. Following the same principles, this creates another interesting look that would match the feel of the G.I. Joe figures from the 80s and the 90s perfectly. But let's talk about color schemes for a moment. Did you ever wonder why so many people like zebras as their favorite animal? Or why we all love Lady Gaga's outfits? Or why so many people love the sight of a beautiful sunset? I can give you the answer in just one word. Contrast. Nerd alert! Contrast means nothing more than a striking difference between two adjacent objects. This can mean dark and light, different fabrics or materials, or the use of so-called contrasting colors. Contrast gives the eyes a lot to look at, which makes an image more interesting. I find a color wheel a very handy-dandy tool to help me determine color schemes. A color wheel shows different color relationships. And when you pick a color, you can see its so-called complementary colors standing across the color wheel. Two complementary colors are literally opposite of each other and therefore create a nice color contrast. So if we look at the sunset again, we see blue next to orange, which are complementary colors. If we look at green in the color wheel, we see it has red as its complementary color. But orange is also in the complementary region of green, and therefore creates a nice contrast with green. Combining inspiration you get from an existing example and the color theory we just learned from using the color wheel, we can create a very nice looking new camo pattern that still has the same vintage Hasbro feel to it. I would like to make a pattern that resembles the one we find on Falcon's trousers, but then in the color scheme of the EU exclusive Tiger Force Outback. Let's do it! That would be so cool. Because this pattern is more intricate than the blotches I made earlier, I like to add some flow improver to my paint and I thin it down a bit more. Therefore I have to apply 3 or even 4 coats of paint to get complete coverage. Any mistakes I made can be fixed with the same color I use as the base coat, to get this very clean and neat result. Here are some examples of customs that I made using the two-tone Hasbro pattern. And there you have it. If you wondered how to make a typical Hasbro two-tone camo pattern, now you know. Nope. I'm not going to say it.
Knowing is half the battle.
I hope you liked the video and I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun guys. Bye bye Joes. Bye bye. Nerd alert!